Hello and warmly welcome. I am very honored to have you in this session. Mr. Navratan Kataria, you are the Director, Startup Engagement, Innovation and International Partnership at the Center of Excellence, Nasscom. I'm very much greeting you to this session. I'm not really sure at the moment what time it is in India, but here in Stockholm, we are still having morning.
Yes, you just had breakfast and I had my lunch.
Okay, I hope you had a very good lunch then. You have an experience of setting up 14 new businesses for companies that you worked for before. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, I started my career with an aim for sustainability. Clean tech used to be my passion, and I did many of new startups in the areas of solar and wind. And then I moved into both the IT world and innovation world because I had established a very large number of verticals, new business verticals. Two of them were my own, and the rest were of the companies that I worked for. I realized that the same experience can be utilized for helping startups. And at that point of time, 5, 6 years back, Nasscom had already jumped into helping startups across the country. So Nasscom, I will describe you a little later, but that is what I am. Primarily, I'm an electrical engineer with a master's in energy systems and an MBA.
And I'm very grateful for all your engagement in this event. And I've actually had the honor to engage with Nasscom before this as well. We had a joint delegation of India's largest ICT companies in Stockholm about 2.5 years ago, I think, and we set up a very great session together with Niklas Jonsson at Business Sweden with a lot of entrepreneurs that actually brought a lot of fruits for the startups and the scale-up that took part in it. So I know for sure that that you are engaging in Sweden and that we are collaborating. We also know that it gives great results for our respective communities. So I'm super grateful. I would like to ask you how you have been, what is your view of Sweden and of the possible exchange that our both countries have?
See, we have had some experiences of dealing with Japan, Germany, France, Israel, and UK, of course, USA. And we realized that we are missing a very important part in Europe, which is Sweden. We initiated with this Ignite Sweden, and we realized that this cannot be a one-off engagement. We have to continuously open the borders for cross engagements of all the startups across the globe. And this is what we have had experience of doing with other countries. And Sweden is a very important country for us because I think the percentage or the ratio of innovators in your country versus the population you have is a very high population and a percentage, which I think resembles close to what Israelis do, which is very famous for that ratio. And I think if we can combine these strengths and complement startups across the globe, uh, also help, and specifically that we deal with B2B and AI and IoT, these guys require a hand holding in the initial phases of their career or their life. And that is where our connections with corporate world is very crucial for them to start moving and walking. Of course, if the product and solution is very good, they will run by themselves after that. At NASSCOM, which is a 30-year-old organization, not for profit, association of all IT companies in India. And you know that in India, almost every multinational IT company also is in India, primarily in Bangalore, a major chunk of them. We have an opportunity to bring all these stakeholders together uh, to help innovations get adopted.
I can only agree, and the relationship with India is extremely important to Sweden too, and we are therefore extra happy for having you here. I think that you have a presentation about Nasscom, and I would kindly invite you to please share it. The audience, including myself, is very curious to enjoy it.
So I had a small video of which, if you can run it before that presentation so that we do not have a break, that introduces a little bit of us, and then I'll run through my presentation.
I'm just connecting with my technicians here. The movie?
Yes, they can see you perhaps.
Okay. They already showed the movie before we started our talk.
All right.
Okay,
Then
then it's time for you to, yes.
All right. So let me share my...
It's a very special time. All of us needs to be, all of a sudden, live TV hosts, and that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So
okay, perfect. The picture is sharp. Yes, you're welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me start with the Nasscom Center of Excellence that I represent. I am a director, as I was introduced. The pictures that you see is the new building that we are just moving in 15 days. We have been in a building which the interior of which is shown on the other two pictures that you see on the screen. These are, this is a lab where we have test and measurement equipment. A lot of people come to pilot with their hardware and software interfacing and connections. I would like to show you around what is the background of Nasscom. It was a organization created not for profit with the support of both the central government as well as the state government. We are pan-India in across 4 cities, each direction, north, south, east, and west. And we are a sandbox of experimenting innovation. We create engagements with the adopting companies. We also have lighthouse projects for social impact. And I would say social impact because these are some projects which either the government or NGOs would pick up. And that is where we try to help in all of these areas. This is what we deal with. We are a sort of facilitator or connector between a lot of stakeholders. The stakeholders may be the industry, which is primarily the adopting organization, the government, because there's a lot of skill development to investment, policy levels, and sort of awareness and thought leadership which is required. R&D, the academic area, as well as the startup, of course, the most important part of it. Very brief of what we have done till now. In the last 5 years, we have 4 centers with hardware and testing laboratories. 1,200 market opportunities has been provided to the startups. And when I say startups, we are not only connected with the startups that we incubate and accelerator, which are 130 plus, but to all the startup in the country who deal in healthcare, manufacturing, mobility. We've gone a little beyond just the technology because at one time we were called IoT. Then we added AI portion because IoT doesn't work without the AI. Now we say any emerging technologies because to an end user, a corporate house, what is more important is not the technology, but how you're solving for him. So if it's a manufacturing industry, it doesn't care what is inside the box, whether it's IoT, AI, or ML. What he's looking for is what is the solution. We do a lot of events and delegations cross boundaries of the country, and we do a very special engagement and mentoring program with the startups. With that, let me give you some academic information about what co-creation is. Many of you would be already aware, but let me just become a little bit of professor for a few minutes. Co-creation is a form of collaborative innovations, and ideas are shared and improved together rather than kept to oneself. But the studies have shown that companies hesitate to share ideas. You know that these are the challenges. People are not willing to share their ideas or solutions, but that's changing now. And why to do a co-create? See, one is any corporate has a very limited and uncertain internal R&D. We all agree that there's a limited resources available with any corporate or any, I would say, adopting organization. When I say adopting, it may be a municipality corporation, it may be a hospital, it may be a government or a public sector organization which is not for profit. Then we have project specific in-house talent. All the engineering people in a corporate are specifically identified for a project and they do not have the time and the bandwidth to go beyond what they are doing today. Internally, investments compete between businesses, houses. So the decisions are very slow. Here is the opportunity, and co-create means that we are not saying that only startups will do these exercises, these innovations, or only the internal R&D engineering guys will do it. What we are saying is if we can marry them together, the resultant will be magic. And that is where the opportunity is. Today, we have very high availability of innovators with complementary capabilities. What corporates have is a very high level of domain expertise. They have been there for ages. They have marketing muscle, they have financial muscle. What startups have is a lot of new ideas, a new way of thinking. They're very agile, very quick, and are very cost effective. Corporates look at the cost of failure, if I can say, is much optimized when they deal with the startups because what happens is if you go and say, this is my shirt and I need a yellow button on a blue shirt, a large branded house will only say, no, I have blue buttons on blue. A startup will say, I will give you what you want. So they're highly customizable. Customization is very important for the innovators. The way that corporates look at is if there's something high risk or unproven products in very rapidly changing markets, because the ideas are quite fast changing, then they look at a very good chance of dealing with the startups, engaging with them, so that the risk could be sort of shared between the two, both the corporates who have the muscle to get into the market and the financial and the brand, whereas the startups can feed them with their innovations quickly, customizable, and at a reasonably, when I say reasonably low cost, I didn't mean that these are cheap, but what I'm saying is if you in the same budget can do instead of one trial, a startup probably can do 3 times or 5 times. So the cost of failure is very low when you get engaged with the startups. Of course, benefits for corporates is catching up with market requirements. You have to remain abreast with the changing technologies and the changing requirements of the market. Access to diverse capabilities and resources, reduce risk and cost sharing, as I said, and brand building. A lot of corporates do come to us and say, look, if we do not show that we are innovative enough, we will be probably out of the market in terms of brand. We need to engage with the startups to continue to show that we are innovative, we are thinking for the future. There is one negative part of engaging with the startup, which corporates do realize that the IP is not all theirs, as engaged if they were developing it in house. But why do you need a full IP with you if you can monetize it jointly? That is the point. So COA, the Center of Excellence, was founded specifically with a focus on co-creation for enterprises, because what we realize is that while academics produce ideas from academic point of view, you need market opportunities for early stage and not so well matured startups. They need this kind of support from the enablers like us in Swedish Park. What we are looking for right now are the manufacturing, health, mobility type of areas where we do involve deep tech startup and their networks. And what we are looking for is when we do events and when we get into the market, we look at, for example, manufacturing industry. So your audience or your adoptees are manufacturing factories. In a hall, if you have large number of manufacturing companies, the use cases or the problems will be very similar. And you can solve it in different ways. You can solve either for the worker safety or helping them in creating a good manufacturing or maintaining a high level of quality, those kind of things. We are already connected with a few of those examples that I mentioned are AstraZeneca, Z Health, Bosch, Siemens Health, Bayer, QV Rhineland, a good number of we have, and I'll show you at the end. A different type of co-creation models exist. Not all the corporates work with the same kind of model. Enterprise accelerator, like most of the accelerators corporates which came yesterday and the day before, have their own accelerator programs. They have startups which are getting nurtured in-house, but somebody has to feed those startups into that system. And not only that, these accelerators will be with these startups for 3 to 6 months. What happens after and before that is equally important. There has to be continuity of their startups growth, and that is where we come into picture, both in terms of feeding them startups, curated startups, as well as taking them after they've done their jobs. Use cases, matching, discovery and matching, run challenges, crowdsourcing of ideas, and of course we have been asked by a lot of corporates, can we help create the way of thinking innovatively within their employees? Because unless their employees and the business units are familiar with what startups can do, what innovation is, they will probably not be buying your startups solutions. So it is very important for us to also evangelize these employees and the management and the strategic people to be able to get in tune with the startups. I will now just briefly give you two use cases just to give an idea of how we have worked. And this is not very different from anywhere else in the world, but just to give an idea of in manufacturing, we had a welding use case where a welding had a large number of rework requirement. Wrong welding was time consuming and was very painful for the customers. And 40% rejects could have happened in the end products. So the only two ways that to do is ultrasound testing or destructive testing. Not both of them are good enough. So the solution that we have from an organization called Switch On, an incubator that we have, is a high-speed sampling which continuously monitors the quality of the welding right at the tip, measuring a large number of parameters to continuously enable the feedback to the parameters, to the electrical current, to the operator, so that he can also learn and he can correct the situation. Today, and this is a very large company, Toyota, they have done and they have said that there's 100% quality welding in real time without going to the need of destructive testing has been the result of this. So this is a very high level of ROI. And yes, we will go to the next one, which is about a healthcare system in which breast cancer would be a big issue with the world. And this organization called Niramai, having very high level of AI applications, uses a thermal camera to measure the abnormalities in breast. And with AI running at background, they can screen a large number of women at a very high level of accuracy without radiation, without the pain of a mammogram. And we all know that breast cancer has been affecting women at much earlier ages now. And usually the doctors recommend mammography only after a certain age. And how do you access the remote rural areas of the country? Thermal graphy with the AI engine is a low cost, can be deployed at a very large scale, and the results are highly accurate. These are the two type of startups that I wanted to give an information of. I will just now dwell upon why India and what is so unique about India. If you look at the type of internet, the number of internet subscribers, the smartphone users, the average data consumption per users, this is phenomenal. We have set up infrastructures which are so unique. I think the only competition we have is China in terms of numbers, number of market, and we know that we are a more favored nation when it comes to looking for customer acquisitions. If you look at digital transactions, we have 1 billion digital transactions a month. If I have to buy one banana from a street hawker, I can today pay 5 euro cents to him digitally without sharing any commission to anybody. This is the strength of the infrastructure, and I must appreciate the government of India and the state governments, which have brought us to this platform, which is so essential for any digital oriented startup to deploy their systems. If you look at, just to give an idea of, two-thirds of internet subscribers are between 12 to 29 years of age, and they are your consumers. If a father or a grandfather doesn't know how to operate internet or a smartphone, these guys will teach them to be able to use your solutions for them. If you look at, we have a large number of what we call villages. They are being optically connected today. And SMBs, or the small and mid-sized companies, are very crucial because 60% of them have said in a very recent survey that for remaining competitive, they have to go digital. Digital has become absolutely crucial for them. And specifically after COVID, this is like written on the wall. If you look at this side on the right, today we have clocked average of 11 GB per month consumption of data. And do you know how much I pay every month? You'll be surprised. I pay 4 euros a month for 11 GB of data. That's an average, and unlimited calls I can make. This is the market for you. We also compare ourselves with the global trends. So if we talk of manufacturing industry, digital adoption, for example, we've seen where we stand. So we see that we have a lot of room to fill, and that room is the market available to the startups sitting out over there. And they run through across all sectors, whether it's healthcare or banking, finance systems, or manufacturing, telecom, retail, name anything, it's a market. One of the ways I wanted to talk about is the way that innovation sort of strength of a country is known is by the number of unicorns. And if you look at, this data might be a little old, but if you look at USA, China, India comes as the third largest producer of unicorns. And it doesn't take too long for a unicorn to become, if you look at the average time, it takes 5 to 7 years, and that's now reducing. And many of these unicorns are not because of something that they have tried it from somewhere else in the world and brought it into India. But you will also look at that on the top, you see there are 40 other unicorns outside India, but started by Indians. If you look at tech startup scene, I'm just trying to show you what are the high growth rates in the tech startup scene. Shara, I'm doing good on the time. Please tell me. So the growth rates are, of course, very high in the fintech, enterprise, health tech, ed tech. A lot of these technologies are being used in variety of team segments. And if you look at the growth rate of CAGR in the last 5 years, it's a very good sign of much more that can be done over here. This is a sort of indication of where the unicorns are, and most of us will recognize the fact that B2C is the market for unicorns. We are now looking at a large number of investors looking at not only B2C, but are looking at B2B, because B2B gives them like a solid foundation. The probability of a B2B failure is much lower than a B2C startup. Though I must say the chances of a B2B to become a unicorn at a very high speed will be much lower than a B2C. So when a VC comes to a startup, he tries to balance his portfolio between risk and stability. So he tries these days to start pumping some amount of portfolio money into B2B as well. And you do not see too many of B2B. Yes, there are, like Renew Power is an energy. This is a renewable energy company, both in solar and wind. So there are a few of these guys who are into B2Cs or B2B to C. Bangalore happens to be the country's capital for innovation. The largest number of startups do exist in Bangalore. Delhi, the capital, and Mumbai are coming up shortly. This is the kind of partners that we have. Just to give you an idea of, we have healthcare, we have Diageo, which is alcohol manufacturers, the electrical companies like Schneider's, the Qualcomms and the Intels of the world, the LG, the consumer market, and so on and so forth. That completes my presentation, and I'll be open for any Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very, very interesting and impressive presentation. I only have one question for you that I'm personally quite curious about. I mean, we are in the midst of I'm very impressed by the growth of your startup scene, and it was very insightful. Thank you so much. What would you say? In Sweden, we see that the effects from the pandemic is mostly affecting startups within B2B deep tech and B2B environmental solutions, clean tech. What is your impression?
So nobody can deny the fact that your orders are on hold, things are not being executed. What is happening right now? If you look at the CXOs or the decision makers in corporates, they're sitting primarily at home, not engaged into day-to-day routine operations. They have been told that the new normal is coming and you have to think differently. They are today very eager to listen to what they were ignoring, if I can use that word, these startups a few months back. And now, in fact, I spend 14 hours a day now to connect a startup, because what I've been telling them, this is the right time for them to be convinced. You give them a pitch, this pitch takes a little time. You make them ready that by the time the COVID goes away, they are ready to sign that purchase order on you and give you the first check. And this is what a lot of these startups are doing, because fortunately, neither the startups are actually deploying or are in the field, or nor the CXOs are into the factory, if I can say that. They are both available to listen to each other or talk to each other. And this is the great opportunity to really convince them why it is important for them to marry with innovation.
Thank you. That was the perfect closing words also for what's happening on the other stage, where we have this global matchmaking. And you've been very helpful attracting your partner, large companies, to be an active part in this too. So we're really hoping that we are building a lot of new business opportunities together today. So I want to thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm really looking forward to continue collaborating with Nasscom and deepen all the relations with India, Sweden at all levels.
We have just signed an agreement with Swedish ecosystem on a long-term basis, and that is being promoted tomorrow in Bangalore Tech Summit, which is an event, global event, where the Prime Minister inaugurated today. So it will be announced tomorrow. And any startup which wants to come to India and seek support from us, we are very much more than welcoming to you. Welcome to India.
Fantastic. And I'm hoping that myself also will be able to come and visit you sometime soon. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic rest of the day. And we are moving on to Gothenburg and Lindholmen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.